I really don't even know how long this gonna be, man. Boy. It's a beast. I'm definitely probably gonna have to do a part 2 to this. I know I will. Man. You talking about deep revelations and so forth about a lot of things. Let me get the phone to just sit up right quick. Come on, man. Okay, perfect. You talking about some deep revelations, y'all. I had a beautiful, or am having a beautiful conversation with someone. And it just seems like, okay, let's give honor to Source, to the Creator, the Most High God, whatever you see your high power as. Let's give honor to Source. Give gratitude through these transitional moments. Shout out to this special individual right now that I just feel like it's heaven sent, that it's like it was appointed to be on my journey right now. But shout out to you, especially. Like I said, y'all heard me talk about before how, like, you know, you can be going through, let me take these off. How you can be going through, like, what we call, like, I say a midlife crisis. I mean, that's another term, but I had to be reminded by someone, like, no, you're going through a transition. And I already know that this video is probably going to be, there's going to be a lot more to this, because I really don't even know where to start. I do, but it's just what I'm currently in the process of. And it's like when you're going through a transition or a shift and it's very uncomfortable, it can force so many emotions out of you. It can force the things that we don't want to accept and don't want to see when it comes to whether you're transitioning from relocating from, you know, a new, old way of living, an old version of yourself, a relationship, you know, a lot of things where it can bring very uncomfortable feelings. It can bring up very things that self-realizations, you know, if we are aware of it and if we pay attention to the emotion in itself. That being said, there's a huge topic that I've been, man, like I said, it really brought me to a place where I reflected on it. I been self-reflecting a lot, even when it comes to my life's journey, my experiences. And man, this is a huge one, especially, like, you know, if you've been here before, I talk about things on different levels of, like, physically speaking, like from certain demographics when it comes to men. These things can happen to just men, but especially sometimes with men that are darker. You know, the healing that's happening within us, that's happening with, you know, the patriarchal and the matriarchal aspect, you know, throughout humanity, you know, consciously and so forth. So a lot of what I'm speaking about is to bring like a higher awareness and a deeper into in-depth like conversation when it comes to what we're probably all experiencing. Some of us are closing out a lot of cycles, old versions of ourselves where we're being reborn through. And, you know, I was reminded from someone today, like how, you know, it can, you know, to shift the perspective, like when you're going through a transition, it can be exciting. And, you know, to me, that sounded a little crazy because, you know, my upbringing and through my experiences, I was like, you know, I'm used to seeing things, or from having grown up in conflict-driven environments, like going through things in a more chaotic way, or it gotta be a certain way, and I gotta be attached to a certain things for it to actually be, you know, the mental aspect, the mental dysfunction around that anyway, to how, which I gradually grew out of. It's like, you know, it doesn't have to be painful. Now you can grieve in your own way, but it doesn't have to be painful in a way where, you know, there has to be arguments, or, you know, there has to be a dispute. And sometimes it does have to happen that way, you know, through war. Sometimes there is peace, or through, chaos that has to be a new beginning. Um, like I said, I already know this video or that is gonna be like a part two or a whole nother thing. From where I was speaking, exchanging with this, this person was about um, how we have to be an emotional safe place for others. And then, I asked myself, well, have I been an emotional safe place for myself internally? And honestly, no. I'll be the first to like acknowledge it, no. But I don't feel shame or guilt around it because I realize what's more of a deeper awareness is that have I ever seen that? Have I ever been in a presence or had the environment where my emotions were accepted or who I was accepted or embraced? And that's very difficult for us, a lot of us, especially speaking on this level as a dark man. And that's what also I'm gonna get into is like when I ask myself from the lens of a darker man in a country, has this been a necessity or has this been a thing where we and this is for like people, on all levels and all demographics. But especially again for me, I'm speaking from my lens of things where um, when I say creating, and you can research this, but I also have like a definition that I've got, um, you know, off the web, and and it really just hit me when someone was saying earlier, like, we have to be a safe place for each other, and I don't just mean this physically because I feel like we there's a misconception where and this is what I realized, like learning the importance of emotional intelligence and having to unlearn behavior patterns where I had to reconnect with my emotions and learn emotional integration. Or is that the word? Emotional, is it integration? No, not integration, regulation. I had to regulate my emotions. And due to uncomfortable situations, again, due to the behavior patterns or due to the environments, I realized how much that has affected me from a little boy, that little boy still being in there, the inner child, and also how it has had a ripple effect throughout my relationships, business-ships, just throughout my whole journey. And I was telling myself, like, wow, um, not only having an emotional unavailable caregiver or parents or even in these set environments has affected me, but millions. And when you're talking about the energy of how it affects us internally and externally, um, I realized like when this person had mentioned like, we have to be a safe place for each other, and then her being a woman, um, she, for me as a darker man, it really hit me coming from a woman that was darker. And the reason I'm using this is because it's just my current world or my reality. And again, it's not to force any narrative on no one, but this is speaking to, again, the demographics that I grew up in and things that I went through pertaining to said men who grow up in said places where there aren't therapy, there aren't resources um, centered around uh, when it comes to supporting said, having emotional support, having even emotional stability, or even know how to regulate emotions. And so again, they're living a life where they're in a position where it's between fate and destiny. And when you don't have these things, that's apparent or that's vital in the environment, in the home environment, on levels, in the school environments, and even in the country, there's so many things I go into depth with about it. To where again, you know, we think that we have to have a house or have financial security or have certain things to feel a sense of safety. But that's why I always speak on levels of emotional stability, security, spiritual hygiene, security, being secure within self, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-sufficiency. And all those things connect to the mental, being mentally stable, spiritually, emotionally. And then all that plays a part in being physically, how we show up physically. So through my observation and awareness of self, and how I have affected those in my life and how I was affected. It's almost like infected by, this ease or this discomfort of not knowing what it is and how to regulate my emotions, not ever being in an environment where I felt safe, being in relationships where you have an emotionally unavailable partner due to their upbringing or due to their said circumstances. And then, attracting or being in said things where are you able to learn the lesson? Or then, for some of us, whether you have kids and realizing the bigger picture, how that affects them, how it mirrors back if you are aware how emotionally unavailable you are to yourself, or not even having an emotional supporting environment to where that trickles down to them. And when you look at the grand scheme of things, this is a big wound in throughout the world, throughout the country, where both matriarchal, where you don't have women who have felt safe or are emotionally safe and secure, or even been in emotionally safe environments. So when I reflect and look at my experience as a child, as a little boy, can I say that I have grew up in some of the most healthy environments? No. Okay, that's able to recognize the wound, and then I'm able to get to the root of it and then speak about it. Because I can attest and I can take full responsibility to say, wow, due to my unawareness at the time or not being, in tune with myself, my feeling not safe or not feeling secure emotionally, and that impulsiveness has affected many lives, whether unintentionally or, through my own innocence and not being aware. But now I'm becoming aware. It's the accountability to realize, can I break that generational curse and chain? And then being able to speak and share this message with the youth and those that will come after me, no matter their demographics, no matter their colors, but most importantly, speaking from a darker man and what you don't see out there in humanity, or what you don't see, whether, no, I'm not a licensed therapist. No, I haven't been in things for years. I'm speaking from authenticity, from my own fucking experiences. Because when I read about, defining what having an emotional safe place is, I realized wow, there's so many things that I can connect the dot. There's so many rotten fruit, through actions that has affected others through those said actions, that produce rotten fruit, or that produce a fruit that affects everybody. And when we are not aware of this as men and women, then it affects everyone involved. So when I looked at the definition, it says emotionally safe places. So being emotionally safe, or having a emotionally safe environment or safe place, says that emotional safe place is one where you are accepted for who you are and can express yourself without fear of judgment, despite the differences that may exist. Wow. Let me read that again. The first one says it all. An emotional safe place is one where you are accepted for who you are and can express yourself without fear of judgment, despite the differences that may exist. Now, for a lot of us, we can speak on many levels when it comes to this. Now, going back to my own set experiences, I can honestly say I never had that growing up as a child, but I also can see into my adulthood how that has trickled down and affected so many other people due to my not feeling or having that emotional safe place, or not even being that for myself. It took me 35 years to realize now I can finally be an emotional safe place, and also being in environments where I can attract or be in alignment, or be around people who know the importance of what it is to be, not, where I can be accepted fully, as it says, and express myself without fear of judgment. Now, when I'm reading that, it brings up so many things, especially as a darker man, that when you look at the history, or just even demographics where there's been darker people that I've been around growing up, where again, I realize now that they never felt safe within themselves. Their behavior demonstrated that. They never knew how to regulate their emotions. So you would see this uncontrollable behavior pattern, or due to the inconsistency of not having a safe place, they join gangs, or they go out and do certain things where, again, they're just trying to feel seen, accepted, embraced. So a lot of us, especially for myself, being abused young, again, that really affected me to where I had to realize, like, I had to keep that in a lot. Then that trickled over to, a reoccurring pattern where, again, if I never had an emotional safe place to be myself, then a lot of us, especially young men, can get caught up in the idea of like feeling like the only way I can be myself and the only way I can be accepted if I play sports, if I go out here and be tough in front of the girls, or if I go out here and, drugs, or get into things where, that's the only way people will pay attention or see me. And I'm gonna let you know that's far from the truth, man. It's bullshit. It's not who you really are inside. You're just hurting, or you really never had a safe place. And the reason I come on this platform, and the reason I say this, is because, again, a part of this was a part of me feeling like safe again. And outside of that, it's a confidence and courage I had to have to say, fuck the naysayers and forget about what everybody say. Sometimes, you're called to do something so that other people, no matter through their uncomfortability, can see it. And those that really know me outside of this still know the confidence and knowing that it's in me, not on me. No matter how I look, I'm still here the same as I would be anywhere. And, and so even to the youth, the young men that look like me, needing a reflection of them, again, that they've been used to seeing someone else, police, or, a lot of controlled environments, or a lot of scarcity, or a lot of, fear-mongering push to keep, said little boys in a lower nature of not really rising into their emotions and honoring it, and feeling like they got to stay in a stuck place, and not realize like it's a part of who you are, and it's the beauty of who you are. Your emotions are to be watered, and so you feel safe within yourself, and to know that you are secure within yourself, no matter what you look like. And even what you look like is just a part of your genetic makeup, your divine essence. So reflecting on that, and when I look at my demographics, and even just relocating and being in other places, there's this thing in the air where we know, and I've made it very apparent, even with, being with people who are not, say, the same shade of color, made it very apparent. And I realized, like, I was speaking up for myself. I was standing in my truth. I was honoring, who I was, and I wasn't keeping it dormant or pushing it down anymore. Addressing the said self-hatred or racism or certain things where, again, if I don't feel emotionally safe in a set environment where things are happening or going on, then who am I to just sit back and think that changes are going to happen, or I'm supposed to create it, or somebody else, and wait around for someone to do it? So with that being said, that is another theme on being accepted. When I look at the reflection of this country and around the world, what has been pushed down and pushed away, when what it, the proud feeling, not even just proud, I want to say proud, I want to say the empowerment around being a darker man. No matter what I look like, my tattoos, my hair, my expression, my divine expression, just as anyone else has the birthright to express themselves. Why is mine devalued? Why is mine pushed aside? Why is my emotion undervalued or pushed away? I ask myself that. Why is my emotions and the women that don't look like me, that don't look like me per se in the country, why is their tears more important than mine? And I'm not saying that they are. It's why is another person's pain or struggle more important than someone else? Why is someone else's success more glorified than the other? So what the integrity in, again, where I can address and see the ego rather than the truth being upheld. Truth and love is being pushed forward, it's coming to the forefront, and through that, it exposes the lies and the ego. Now they both have, all of it has its purpose. What I can say, and I can acknowledge, that I'm not looking for no so-called leaders or people who of status or anyone to come up front and say, to be honest to themselves and the youth, which we already know has been going on. That's why I'm able to peep game from afar and realize, like, you have a platform, but yet and still you don't really speak about the fact of you really are unsafe. Your behavior that you display, whether you go out there with this impulsiveness to violently hurt someone, no matter their color or even someone that look like you, my brother, anybody, sister, anybody else, you don't feel safe. There's something that you're trying to protect. I've learned that through my own experiences where I didn't feel safe in certain places. I didn't feel secure, and I felt like I had to protect that little boy. Some of you had to feel like you had to protect that little girl. And especially being a darker person in a country where I cannot say I've been accepted or feel accepted or embraced majority of my 35 years. What I mean by that, I mean consistently. There is nothing, a corporation, there is no business, there is nothing, not even our own women. And I'm not saying all, but there is nothing when it comes to even our men, especially that I've spoken about before, where we have a place where we feel emotionally safe, accepted, to express ourselves without fear. Fear of being judged, despite of how we want to be. Just literally be a human being. Just being ourselves. Without the backlash. The bringing up what we've done in the past. The defensiveness, the deflecting. And I realize that these are people who don't see the importance and beauty within themselves. I see the little boys and girls within them that's crying out. And the only reason they're bothered by me energetically or physically is because their insecurities, their deep insecurities or deep wounds, emotionally, mentally, and so forth. Their deep father and mother wounds. And when I see these little boys, when I look at myself, when I can be able to put myself in these places, no matter what I look like, because I can also look at a man that is a different shade and realize, like, is he doing this through a place of woundedness? And I can recognize the energy immediately. And that's through my own internal growth. So on another level of speaking, like, I cannot say that there has been a place where I felt emotionally safe, where I feel like I don't have to protect myself when I go to certain environments. And a lot of us know this. When you go back to the hood, or when you go to the trenches, or when you go somewhere, a lot of those dudes that still trying to put on and trying to, I don't care if they're a rapper, I don't care what they do. The truth is, a lot of them doing what they're doing and the narrative that they pushing, and a lot of what they're getting endorsed by and paid for, is to prey on childhood wounds. Is to know purposely that energy that's being pushed, the powers that used to be, is purposely, is because if I can get you not to really believe in yourself and be secure within yourself emotionally and feel safe within yourself spiritually, mentally, physically, you're going to not be your authentic self. You're going to show up as someone else. There are characters placed purposely to push this narrative so that kids can know that it's okay not to be yourself, not to express yourself through your artistry, through your divine makeup. When we're all here individually to do our own thing, because it's our birthright to be sovereign. And when I look at these little boys, when I speak about this, I speak for all men. I speak for all little boys, especially darker boys. Like I said, there's nothing against any other kid, but when I look at the demographics, when I look at what has been going on in the country, in the world, why is it that a man like me can be attacked and so ridiculed? And so, why isn't there a safe place for me to be myself? Why isn't there an emotional place for me to express myself to my own women that I come from? And I had to recognize that fucking pattern, that generational curse I even had to break. As I had to connect the dots and realize through my mother wound, I realized this woman and what she went through, she never felt emotionally safe. Where she was accepted in this world, where she was accepted in this country, where she was accepted even in her own family. And a lot of us can relate to that, no matter your culture, no matter your shade. But especially when I look at what I saw my mother go through, I was like, wow, now I can have a sense of compassion for myself and what she went through. She gave her best, even though she was scared, even though she was afraid. Women in these demographics where they have to lie on said applications and so forth because of what? They have to. They don't want to, but to protect themselves and, the fear around their kids, their little boys. When you see the fear mongering, when you see the fear propaganda on the television, when I sit here and tell people that don't look like me, I'm like, you will never know the feeling in the depths of my pain. As a darker man, you will never know what it is to look over your shoulder when you're driving. Because you're comfortable in your predominantly, certain towns that look like you. You're comfortable because, again, a lot of you don't never want to tell the truth about that. Yeah, a lot of you feel safe until someone darker comes. When you're faced with reality, when you're faced with the inner wounds of what your ancestors did and how you created that certain sundown town or a certain country where through the blood and through the blood and through the war of what you so-called inherited. And you're proud of this. You're proud to walk up straight through your militant behavior, through your destructive behavior. And this is all cultures and creeds, but especially, you know who I'm talking to. You're proud to say that. You're proud that you don't want your child to interact with someone of a different shade. But you also don't want to be proud enough to tell your children exactly how you inherited your land and what you came from and what your grandmother and grandfather, whom called themselves Christian, who called themselves so religious, who called themselves such a reflection of so-called a said character, who gave his so-called sins for everybody to be what? At peace, to love each other, to honor each other, to respect each other. I'm disgusted with humanity. I'm disgusted with a lot of y'all. Where is the integrity? I'm not going to sit back and be like, oh, I got to say everything they want me to say. For what? Let's not pretend when it comes to being a darker man, when it really comes to, when I say one where you are accepted for who you are and express yourself without fear of judgment, despite the difference that may exist. The differences that may exist. What are those differences? Cultures, creeds, status, monetary, like all these things. And so When you're talking about being a part of said corporations, when you can't be comfortable in your own skin, when you can't express yourself, I dealt with it firsthand. Oh yeah, even the biggest places. I don't care the athletes, the status and stuff. When as soon as you try to be yourself and you want to be accepted, you automatically attack. You automatically attack from certain people who can't wait to sprue their hatred amongst people that are darker. Same thing with people in the hood. When you grow up and you trying to get to a place where you finally feel confident and secure because you know you've been in environments where you haven't, all of a sudden, boom, oh, you better than us now. Or who you think you are? Where you see people who really gun down and unalive little boys or people. What does that saying go? They said a prophet never honored in his homeland. When people try to speak up, when they just try to simply be themselves and they're attacked and ridiculed. This is in all cultures and creed. This happens everywhere. What are we proud of? What are we proud of, people? So again, on the levels of when I look at the corporations, when I look at the business, when I look at things in all levels, things that, the Most High had to take me through to realize, like, I'm going to put you in this place. I want you to really see. I want you to really see. Can you still gain a sense of confidence and self-esteem and rise above and overcome? I was sitting here the other day in the community, in the library writing, and it dawned on me reflecting. I was like, wow, I'm looking at the board. And I was saying, as I was writing this, I was like, wow, I'm in a town in a town where at a point in time there was a sundown town. And I told you I researched this. These are environments where they purposely, intentionally created towns where it was just predominantly a certain people that of a certain color, or a certain complexion, just to keep people that were darker out. These were certain villages and communities where they literally gathered, to orchestrate others' demise and to lynch and to have their kids gather as well. And I'm in there and I'm looking at the wall, and I'm looking at how there's no one darker on the walls when it comes to like what they built, how it was founded. And as uncomfortable as y'all want me to not say this, these are your so-called people who proclaim to be Native Americans and Christians and all this religious stuff. And, that's just another mask to what? To what? Come in to seek, kill, and destroy, or do things to inherit it, to take by force, and then to walk proudly as if they did something great. What's great from that shit? What's the legacy of that? So I'm looking at the wall and I'm seeing like, wow, the divine was placing on my heart, like, do you realize where you are? Do you realize what you're overcoming? Do you realize that you're in a town? I brought you to a place where you're in a town where you walk with your fucking head up straight. You walk with your chest out, because at a point in time, and this goes back to emotionally feeling safe. You know how emotionally safe and secure I have to be? And for a lot of us that never talk about this, to be in a career or to be in a certain status and it's being in certain environments, because it's no difference in where I was in a darker environment, where you did not have a mother and a father or family members who even felt safe within themselves, or even accepted their own shortcomings or flaws, or even accepted the parts of themselves. So they cling to the fear. They cling to the fear of the consequences of being different, of being unique, of being loved, of loving themselves through when people don't want to love or choose to accept or embrace you. Being a generational curse breaker. So the divine was like, you know where you are? Look at these walls, observe. Realize you're in a place where at a point in time, not long ago, 20, 30, 50 years ago. That's not long ago. Are you aware that there's still people, no matter their uniforms, that are still live like this to this day? Do you realize how intimidating you are, a lot of you, when you are confident in who you are? When you're not afraid of said death? When you're not afraid to be who you are, no matter your status, no matter the money, no matter what you have? It's in you and not on you. This is what they're intimidated by, no matter what culture or creed. It's your essence, it's your spirit that those forces are intimidated by, no matter what is thrown your way, in the spirit realm and in the physical. It's how you stand up. It's how you speak up. It's how even times when you choose a battle, when you already won, you choose not to battle when you really already won the war. The divine said, look around, look at the wall. Do you see what was built here? Do you also see what's fading away? Do you also see what you are implementing? Do you also realize the blueprint that you're carrying? From at a time where your ancestors will want you to war with said people, will want you to get a rise out of yourself emotionally, to be impulsive, knowing that you could be outnumbered, but yet you're reminded of your ancestors that came before you. For they don't realize that there is something that is carrying you along. They wonder why you walk by yourself, why you don't fear as others would, why you don't succumb to the tricks and to the traps that they've set. Why you don't subscribe to the other narratives that people that look like you do. Look around, look at that board, look at all those people on there that don't look like you. Pay attention. But look at the unhappiness on their face. Some of them didn't even want to choose that. Some of you are in families that you don't even want to be nothing like your mother and father. You don't even want to be an example of that, because you know that example is so disappointing. It's so disgusting, the energy that it carries when people want you to be something that you know in the deep core of who you are, you're nothing like. And there's no difference no matter what your color and creed are. I don't care what type of sexual preferences that you feel like you want to live in. Guess what? Be you. Because no one's going to love you. There's others that will align and love you, no matter what vessel that you are in. As long as you're secure within who you are. So what? The world may not accept you and embrace you. So what? Can you get through and navigate those emotions to love yourself even through the uncomfortability of the anger and the frustration? So when I'm in there typing, Spirit said, be grateful, get excited, because you are doing something that could not been accomplished, said years ago. You will be dragged out of this place. You will be hung from a tree. And those people will have their kids right there. I mean, it's documented. But some of you don't realize what you are, a generational curse breaker. Your confidence, your essence, and to speak up and to stand firm in your boundaries. And to date someone that doesn't look like you. To even love yourself through the uncomfortability. No matter who accepts you, no matter who embraces you. Because a lot of you are here to create those communities. A lot of you, Spirit's like, I'm bringing you to a community where you realize that this doesn't reflect your core values. They don't know what it is to feel emotionally safe. Because a lot of these environments and communities and a lot of these corporations and business does not reflect an emotional safe place where you can be yourself, where you can be accepted for who you are. Where you don't have to fear the consequences for being darker, for being whatever sexual preferences that you claim to be. I'm not here to judge that. To be whatever status. Like when it says, like, to express yourself without fear of judgment despite the differences that may exist. That means whatever exists in this world right now, the illusion around how things change, how you're always evolving. I'm going to bring you to places, device. I'm going to bring you to places to see, to know just when you think about giving up, I'm going to remind you of what your ancestors went through. I'm going to remind you why we chose you to speak up, to stand firm, to not fear the consequences of loving your fucking self, of setting healthy boundaries, of walking in integrity. And yeah, you may grieve through the people that may fall away from your path because you got to give them room to grow if they choose to, if they choose to heal. And if they're ready, they'll be ready. But when they're not, you still have to press forward. It also mentioned how a relationship which you can, having emotional safe places also mentioned how a relationship in which you can be vulnerable and go beneath the surface and know that you aren't alone in your fears and pains, bro. This shit almost brought tears to my eyes reading it, bro. You know how a lot of us can relate to that? And the reason I speak on all levels, especially speaking from a darker man, is because I bring people in my world that probably unaware of this, probably will come through their awakening of this, to realize like y'all don't know the pain of certain things. So let me bring you into my world. I'm not asking for your sympathy. I'm not asking for that. But I have empathy even for the people in their ignorance, even in their stupidity, when they're parading themselves proudly on something that they have no knowledge about, because they know history, but not her story. Her, not his. But what about the women? What about the women that experience the matriarchal, that experience a lot of turmoil and a lot of things for this patriarchal to be? The woundings around all of that shit. So when I say a relationship which you can be vulnerable, when's the last time a lot of us can be vulnerable in something where we can go beneath the surface of what we have experienced and know that I'm not alone when I express my fears and pain? That's been one of the most gut-wrenching things that I've had to learn when you're trying to be vulnerable. And that's with women of different creeds and cultures. You know how the challenging is growing up trying to be vulnerable with your mother? When she has her own father wounds, when she's going through her own spiritual warfare. When you want to address your fears and pains. Mama, this hurt me. And it's dismissed. And then she, again, continues to trauma bond with a man, knowing that she don't feel safe, but she clings to that emotional, the emotional and physical abusive relationship. And you're there left alone in your fears of abandonment, in your fears of pain. Because when she's not around, and a lot of us experiences, when he or she not around, the experience a lot of you have dealt with sexual abuse, which leaves you feeling abandoned within yourself. Where, again, that strips you of your emotional safety. When you have been in an abusive, emotional, physical, and sexual abusive relationship, or dealt with something in your childhood as such, that it immediately removes, it literally sweeps that off and under you. A lot of us that have dealt with sexual traumas, where after that, I realized, if I'm trying to be, how can I be vulnerable? I'm thinking that my vulnerability comes outside of me trying to seek that acceptance in being with multiple partners. And running from the internal me. This is what happened with a lot of people who have dealt with sexual traumas. You're running from the internal you. You've been running from you, looking for that acceptance because you never felt, when that trauma happened, when that experience happened, you realize like you develop this identity through that. You try to escape through sex, through certain things. You try to escape through that trauma. Literally the opposite of an emotional safe place is that if we can't have a place where we feel accepted to express ourselves, we'll look for that in other people through that said traumatic experience. I've done it. I've lived it. To talk about it, to honor it. There was another person I came, that mental health counselor that I connected with recently, and it was beautiful what she shared about how exercise, and I'm gonna try to recall this as much as possible, how she mentioned um, how she teaches her clients where, pretty much what I'm doing and what she's doing is it's like kind of similarly. I just did not go to, I'm just not licensed. I just not go to school for it. And I don't proclaim to be this great, therapist or whatever. I had to learn to be my own therapist. I was gifted to know how to just use and maneuver through things the best way I knew how. And I'm just using that in the best way, again, to share with you all. But she expressed to me how, the correlations or the connection, how, the talk therapy, how she would use, like, have people just pretty much tell them what went on. That's the first step, is like allowing them to express what they felt and feeling, and then being able to express what happened to them so they can sit with it. But then she was saying how, like, she also reminds them, like, how, and I think this, in my words, like how we can, what I've said before, how we can find ourselves trying to escape through what happened to us. And this is where you see alcoholism, some with sexual trauma like prostitution, basically overgiving from a wounded place or unfulfilled place. And that has a lot to do with, again, being in places where we have not feel an emotional safe place. And so with that, she was saying how keeping that part of ourselves at arm's length, like that trauma doesn't leave you. That person, that version of you doesn't leave you. But it's almost like you recognize it, but you keep it at arm's length to where it's almost like what is it? It doesn't define you. You refine yourself, or you redefine yourself, or what is it? You refine yourself through the experience, like what I'm doing. Like I've had to go through said experience and talk about it. And then I had to learn through it to realize, like, not to sit and wallow in that pain. So, that was a beautiful thing, again, being open to learn. I'm like, wow, I could use this and learn from this, from my own experiences. When she said it, I was like, wow, shoot, whoa. Now I could realize, like, with those things I've experienced through my, using the books here and so forth, is just a way of facing it, by talking about it and getting through it my own way. And so, again, a lot of us haven't, when you look at the relationships, personal relationships with ourselves, one-on-one relationships with ourselves, internally, and then relationships with other people. Because that's why I feel like one of our greatest lessons that we're learning is, like, our one-on-one relationships with other people teaches us so much about ourselves. I mean, we can isolate ourselves, but at the same moment, one of my greatest teachers is realizing that human interaction was one of the greatest things. Now, when certain things happen, like pandemics or whatever you want to call it, that I feel was a call to go within ourselves. And some of you, whether it be home with your kids and whatever it is you had to go through, to really, there was an opportunity for evolution, an opportunity for growth, to really see and sit with your own emotions. And this is the evolution of humanity consciously. It's like we're coming into a higher evolution or elevating, on all levels, to where when you're ready to do that individually and collectively, it's going to present itself. It's going to present itself through uncomfortability, where we feel like we have gotten comfortable. Now things forces us to see, whether through finances, whether through relationships, so many things on all levels. So when I see what's been exposed, I realize, like, a lot of us, even myself, a relationship where I can really truly be vulnerable and go beneath the surface, I've done it a lot. I've overtold, or is that the word, or I overtalk, or giving so much of other people, pouring in other people, where I had to learn now, what about pouring into myself? What about loving myself? All these things I've been given, at a point in time, the giver has to also be open to receive. There is a season where a lot of us we got exhausted. And this can come with your own personal life, with relationships, and with your kids. When I look at these communities that are just structured around, again, whether they want to give to the world that they are it's an emotionally safe place. No, when I go beneath the surface, I'm able to pick up on the energy, not just individually, not just in these communities, but collectively. So don't ever think just for once, like in a darker community, that certain vices aren't the same in a different shade community or anywhere else where there are different people of cultures and creed. It's the same thing. People have different fears. I was telling someone, that I was speaking to, I was telling them, I'm like, we all have pains, we all have traumas, but the world has been so apart. Humanity has been this division because there's nothing united about states. It's divided. We've been so divided. We've been so disconnected from our essence of who we truly are. And this is the spiritual part I speak about, that we're returning to the balance of things, to the physical aspect, is that we've been so disconnected from our internal wounds or disconnected from our internal worlds and so forth, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, to where we have been so consumed in the physical part of who we are that we don't even know who the fuck we are. We have numbed ourselves through technology. We have numbed ourselves through chasing the bag, getting money. We have numbed ourselves through sex. We have numbed ourselves through a lot of things that we want to escape through. And the only way change can come when we want things on a more harmonious and peaceful level is through the uncomfortability of looking at what has kept us from being in peace and harmony and living amongst peace with ourselves and also amongst other people. And then recognizing who isn't aligned with that, who doesn't want that, and then weeding those things out. Who hasn't? Have I been watering myself? And then who is trying to come in? What do I need to eliminate? What do I need to remove? And so another part of this, it says, adding to the emotional safe place, is that it says not shaming, responsive instead of reactive. And let me tell you something, bro. Me personally, I can see that happening in my childhood. I've seen it a lot, to where I even become, took on this belief system where you want people to feel ashamed of what they went through. And we shouldn't. We shouldn't feel guilt. I'm not saying because that's a lower nature, a lower frequency, because we got to choose to rise out of that to where we can experience bliss, joy, a sense of awareness where, you got to love yourself through those versions where you felt like you should stay in shame and guilt over decisions or what happened to you. Because it ain't always what you did. It's also a lot of people feel ashamed when they went through a sexual experience or feel, guilty of what they experienced, because a lot of us through our childhood, we didn't have really people to protect us. We didn't really have, again, people who grew up in emotionally safe environments where they were either emotionally unavailable due to their emotional instability or didn't feel safe, where we were the product of that. Projection of that on the other end of that. And so we took on this narrative, we took on this belief system, and then it affected not only us, but it created, it became almost like a virus amongst other people. It spread it until we became aware. So when it says responsive instead of reactive, trust me, this is something I'm still learning and getting through. Because when we say being triggered, typically from being triggered, sometimes we can be reactive rather than responsive. When you look at the word responsibility and responsive, we are responsible first for our own emotions. We are responsible first for our own actions. When I look at how, even on the other spectrum of that, like reactive, I can see how my impulsiveness has affected not only me, but the ones I care about. And sometimes, again, this is through the not being aware, like, the demographics that I grew up in or the people that I've been around, and slowly realizing, like, cutting that off, those third parties, those things connected to the trauma, those things that are fueling that, allows that to be removed and grieving through that so other things can come in to be able to pour into me so I can learn now how to be more responsive and not shame myself and not shaming other people. Also, it also says understanding, and I like to use the term understanding and overstanding, which, really comprehending, because you can't have nothing if you don't really know the depths or understand, what that person is going through, to where like having a sense of compassion, validating, flexible, um, and healthy boundaries. You know, for some of us, a lot of us are going through this stage or already going through this, where we realize how important healthy boundaries are, being flexible, and also validating those said emotions, or being around people who validate it. I appreciate you sharing that. You know, your emotions matter. You know, that's important, because words hold a frequency. Words actually, almost like, if you're not in a said place of security, can attach themselves and have an effect on you. And this is what a lot of us younger experience, and now in our adulthood, we're trying to unlearn. And I ain't gonna say guilty of that, but definitely accountable, or take full accountability for that. Because just trying to implement more healthy boundaries is a more important thing, because you just realize, like, everyone doesn't know how to do it. And then not, when you're letting go of things, is realizing, not having think you got to feel guilty. No, you feel empowered, because you realize that it's another version of you is asking for you to be much better and to do things differently this time around. That's how you break a generational cycle and a chain. It also mentioned a sanctuary where you can be yourself, express your thoughts and emotions, engage in self-care activities without fear or distraction. That's huge, man. Like, and this is something I had to accept, even with transition, even when you're walking away from something or going into something new, is that creating a sanctuary where you can really be who you are, all parts of yourself, all aspects of yourself, and also express your thoughts and emotions around that. Engage in self-care activities, and a lot of us don't know what that is. I'm telling you, I had to learn that even after my 30s. Like, a part of this, not what I'm doing here, but journaling, writing down my thoughts and emotions, simple things that I could feel a sense of, like, showing up for myself. How am I showing up for myself today? Did I take a moment to show up for myself, and so forth? And then also that reciprocity in whatever one-on-one connections you have, or because again, the most important one, that one-on-one relationship, is with you first, so you can create that for others as well that come into your life. This is where the healthy boundaries come in. And that's been a challenge, because I've had to go through a lot of things with healing and facing things to where I realized, like, again, core values, belief systems are not the same. So, that can be a very gut-wrenching thing, or, sometimes can feel heart. It doesn't have to feel heartbreaking, but I've learned to realize, like, a lot of things is, at a point in time, I used to feel like when letting go, it had to be painful. No, I realized, like, it can be exciting. It can be exciting because this other version of you, this new version of you, is excited to meet you. This new version of you is awaiting you. Always been awaiting you. It's been awaiting for you to get through that uncomfortability and change and accept. Like, the old version of you, keep it at arm's length, like I said before. But it's still a part of your evolution and who you're coming into. And not everyone can go and are willing to do that. So the self-care thing is important, because without fear and distraction, it says, because that is a thing that comes up where we feel like we want to implement everybody. And that's through, like, again, a lot of codependency a lot of us are breaking free from. I wanted to include everybody in a lot of things. So I realized the importance of going to be with myself more, self-preservation, going to be with myself more, going to love on myself more, and realize, like, whatever comes up for people, however they feel, I'm okay with that. Because that's a part of implementing healthy boundaries as well. And without distractions, it's almost like, again, knowing how to be with yourself without the distractions, without your kids. Again, at a point in time when you become burnt out, because I know a lot of people feel like, well, how I'm going to create this, how I'm going to do this. See, this is the thing where we realize, like, when I look at these communities, when I look how certain things are, um, like operating, yeah, people are saying like, oh well, the so-called community, they don't get along, they don't do this. Look, that's everywhere. That's everywhere. It's not this violence is everywhere. A lot of stuff is everywhere. What is about to really be a highlight, I told y'all, in the coming year, is a lot of mental health awareness, a lot of health or physical health awareness. Because just because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes does not mean that people are not internalizing a lot of shit. And this is where a lot of us are a few steps ahead to where we realize what we're doing is we carry the blueprint of this self-love, pouring into ourselves, this self-care, honoring our emotions, showing up for ourselves. You know, we are creating that community. And those that will come into this awareness or awakening, however you want to perceive it, will be right there. There will be things that will crumble and fall apart, corporations that support it. Again, the opposite of self-care. When you look at the music, when you look at a lot of these things, it's the opposite of really feeling safe emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. The shift is among us. It's changing. And a lot of us are that shift in the flesh. So with that, the more we start to be with ourselves and the more we're called to walk away from certain things which we had to karmically go through to see the lesson in it, and to be able to depart and have your peace rather than spread yourself in pieces. Be able to walk away, and sometimes it can be uncomfortable because a lot of us have to start over completely different. This version of you is not asking the same behavior patterns as before, of doing the same thing or what else? Being around the same people. Your mindset. You want to live a certain lifestyle. It's the renewing of your mind, the environment. When you have to recognize, like, wow, I got to be real with myself. This shit don't support me on no level. Now I'm here physically, but I cannot disregard or neglect myself in the process of like staying somewhere where I know it can feel like I'm stagnant or it can feel like I'm not progressing, which I am in reality. It's just the things that are more so internalized and the things that, people don't see that, you're going through internally, and then having to face that it's very important, vital when it comes to self-care, when it comes to how you're showing up for yourself, when it comes to realizing like you just cannot be around certain people because it does not support the vision that you are given or the bigger picture that you need to connect with others with. And that's gonna come through a major shift that we're seeing happening. And it's a beautiful experience. It is exciting. Like I said, it's times where I feel like, man, what is going on from this? But when there's the breakdown coming, you best believe there's a breakthrough. So I'm gonna leave y'all with that because I gotta get some things going and handle some business. But I just want to let you know, like, the importance of how we haven't had environments where, emotionally like safe places. And, you have an emotional body, a spiritual body, physical body. And some believe that there's more to it than that. But again, I realized in coming into this emotional, being integration or emotional, accelerating at this pace and coming into this emotional intelligence is realize the importance of how much I'm healing that part of myself, that emotional body or that aspect of who I am internally. And the reason being is like how much I repressed and suppressed, and realizing that through that, having repressed it, I was around people in environments who also did the same thing. I also was around people who suppressed things for so many years because they did not feel emotionally safe or were in environments where they felt accepted, where they felt embraced, where they did not fear the consequences, whether they needed to speak up to a mother and be put out the house, where they needed to speak up to this person in an environment, in a job setting, and so forth. And, feel like, they will have to start all the way over. And that's the thing most people are afraid of, is that unknown. They fear the consequences from that. And so they keep telling themselves that they are in a safe environment. They can say that in a physical sense, but the truth is, a lot of us, when we look at the demographics, not just the demographics, but when we look at the beneath the surface and the root of a lot of this, a lot of what has happened ancestrally and generationally that has been inherited is a lot of our mothers, matriarchally, that has given birth to this patriarchal society and so forth that has been happening for years. We can say that both from, the people who have dealt with mental illness and so forth, and the matriarchal and so forth, and the patriarchal, they haven't had foundations where they have felt emotionally safe. So y'all take care of yourself and ask yourself, when's the last time you felt safe within yourself emotionally? And if you got to research it, look it up. Because again, a lot of it is a part of the divine, the wounded masculine and feminine, for the divine masculine and feminine energies to rise within ourselves, to get back to that wholeness of who we are. Peace and blessing. Shalom.